All through history there are some people who live more remarkable lives than others. They stand out, not necessarily always for their benign actions, but nonetheless they have stood out in history. A person like this is John Nicholson, born on the 11th of December 1822 in Lisburn, Northern Ireland. His father died when he was 9 years young, and it was his uncle James Weir Hogg which acted as a patron for him through his school years. This uncle was a successful lawyer for the East India Trading Company, and it was through his advice and influence that Nicholson started, 16 years young, a military career in the East India Company. Soon after his arrival in India, the First Anglo-Afghan War had erupted, and his regiment was sent to relieve one of the infantry units already present in Afghanistan. This Anglo-Afghan War was a disaster, with surprisingly many parallels to the modern wars fought in Afghanistan. John Nicholson was present at the garrison which was stationed at Ghazni during its siege from 20th November 1841 to 10th of March 1842. After that, Colonel Palmer, the garrison commander, capitulated. Later on, after the war ended, Nicholson, together with other war prisoners, were set free, but they still had a dangerous journey back to India. On this journey back to India, John Nicholson was briefly reunited with his younger brother Alexander, which also served in the East India Trading Company. This happened on the 1st of November 1842. But their meeting was a brief one, because John Nicholson had to head back and travel in the rear guard on their journey back. The next day, John found the corpses of the men he had left just the day before. They had been attacked by members of the Afridi tribe. Among the slain men lay the corpse of his brother Alexander. His body hacked to pieces, with his genitals cut off and stuffed into his mouth. This incident left, not surprisingly, a huge impact on John Nicholson's person. And it gave him a visceral, almost psychopathic loathing of all Muslims. This hatred he indulged in over the years to come. And it culminated in the Great Uprising in Delhi in 1857. But before this, Nicholson returned to India and continued his career in the East India Trading Company. He fought in the anglo-sikh wars and was also a remarkable political officer under Henry Lawrence. He was instrumental in the settlement of the northwest frontier, and he was feared for his foul temper and authoritarian manner. But he also gained respect from the Afghan and North Punjabi tribes for his fair-handedness and sense of honor. Such was his persona that he inspired a cult, the Nicholson cult. The East India Trading Company had a policy of hiring high-caste Hindus as sepoys, and a group of soldiers in his unit had decided that the commander was an incarnation of Vishnu, and they founded the Nicholson cult. But Nicholson considered this sort of behavior as a pagan idolatry. Apparently he tolerated it if they kept it private, but if they started chanting, ringing bells or parading, he lost his temper and got them whipped and thrown in the stockade. The Nicholson cult had a popular heyday at the time, but actually survived surprisingly long, in some remote parts of northwest Pakistan, well up into the 1980s. John Nicholson is today best known for his role in the Indian Mutiny of 1857 and how he led the storming of Delhi. Nicholson, with his hatred for Muslims, called for the mutiny to be punished with great severity, suggesting flaying alive, impalement, or burning. Nicholson, however, was mortally wounded during the storming of the city and died 9 days later, only 34 years old. Nicholson never married. One of the most significant people in his life was Major-General Sir Herbert Edwards. For a period, Nicholson used to ride 120 miles each weekend just to spend a few hours with Edwards, and even lived in his beloved friend's house for some time when Edward's wife was in England. The love between him and Edwards made them, as Edward's wife described it, more than brothers in the tenderness of their whole lives. And on his deathbed, Nicholson dictated a message to Edwards saying, "Tell him that if at this moment a good fairy were to grant me a wish, my wish would be to have him here next to my mother." John Nicholson became a Victorian legend, and he was named the hero of Delhi. But his actions as seen today are not so heroic as they were perceived by fellow Britons in the 1800s. But nonetheless, he is a remarkable person in history. Nicholson is remembered several places today, for example at his old school in Northern Ireland, and in Delhi you can find his final resting place, the Nicholson Christian Graveyard, not far from where he drew his last breath on the 23rd September 1857.